Bismillah. Yesterday, our Imam, Jazallah Khair, read Surah Yunus, which we didn't talk about it. And he started a bit from, and all of that from Juz 11, just the first part from Surah Hud. And if you've noticed today, he repeated that part from Surah Hud to show you, just as we said before, the division. We have part from Surah Hud, just one page and stopped in there. Rasulullah never stopped in a place like that. And that's why some scholars of Tawheed, they dislike stopping in places like this. You stop at the end of the surahs. Today, nicely, our Imam stopped the surah from the beginning, Surah Hud. And we're going to have Surah Hud and most of Surah Yusuf in Juz 12. Today's Taraweeh, inshallah ta'ala. To give you a story about these three surahs, I need to take you back just a bit quickly and briefly, inshallah. I'm not going to keep you for long time when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a Nabi in Mecca and a Rasul. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent him to call to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to Tawheed, to the ibadah. Ya qawmi i'budullaha ma lakum min ilahin ghayru. Oh my people, there is no God for you to worship except Allah. It was the main da'wah of Tawheed. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam spent 13 years, but 10 years Rasulullah from the 13 years in Mecca, he spent them making da'wah and da'wah and da'wah, all of that for Tawheed, mainly Tawheedullah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was supported during that time, as you know, by his uncle Abu Talib and his wife Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha. When Abu Talib died and Khadija died, Rasulullah went to a Taif, and that is the second step. He went outside of his home to find out some people to support him, to give him platform to call to the people to Tawheed. And that is the da'wah of all the Anbiya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He spent time in a Ta'if, he called people, he went to the senior people in there, calling them, inviting them, explaining them the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As you all know, he was rejected. Sadly, he was not even rejected, he was treated very, very, very badly. As you all know the story of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He returned from a Ta'if. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knew that his prophet, is down. And he's a human, same as the creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the humans. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala supported and he blessed his prophet by taking him to Al-Isra from Mecca to Jerusalem, and Al-Mi'raj from Jerusalem to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the seventh heaven. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gifted him with the salawat, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala after that revealed Surah Al-Isra. Rasulullah then spent 2 years. That is in the year 11. He spent 2 more years in Mecca calling to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to Tawheed. But these 2 years were the most difficult years upon Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. During these 2 years, Surah Yunus was revealed, where Rasulullah was suffering. Rasulullah went through all that calamity, that problem, that issues, and he was strong. He was continuing calling to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed Surah Yunus. Yunus alayhi salam is a prophet. The surah was named, the first surah in the tartib, in the order of the Quran, was named with one of the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the surah, if you read the surah and you compare what we have in this surah and the Surah Hud, which Surah Yunus, the Imam read that yesterday. The surah presents the Tawheed using the evidence, logical evidence. And Surah Hud, that the Imam now reciting, and we continue reciting that, and then followed by Surah Yusuf, the Tawheed was presented by using the stories of the Anbiya, which we call it evidence, that naqli evidence, and giving you proof by nations before you. Look what happened to them. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Yunus, he presented only 2 stories, the story of Nuh and the story of Musa, briefly. And later on in Surah Hud, as you heard the Imam just now before, he ended this rak'ah, the story of Nuh alayhi salam, and that went into a little bit of details that we did not hear, that details in any other surahs, even the Surah Nuh itself. And that is followed by Surah Hud. Hud alayhi salam, a Nabi from the Anbiya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that is the second name of a Nabi in the tartib of the surahs. These 3 surahs that were revealed in the same way that we see them in the Quran. Yunus was revealed, and then followed by Hud, and followed by Yusuf. That's how they were revealed, and that's how we saw them in the Quran, and they were revealed at during the same time, same situation that Rasulullah was facing from his own people. Hud alayhi salam, as you know, he was sent to the people known as Ad, and he is one of the five, if I may say, or four Arab prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is very important. For the Arab, the Quraysh is very, very important. They know what happened to the people of Ad before. They know Hud himself, alayhi salam, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala punished his people and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroyed his people, and he was saved from that punishment. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala presented in Surah Hud the stories of how he destroyed all the nations before Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and all of that is a reminder to the people of Quraysh during that difficult time. Rasulullah is facing, and before his hijrah to Medina, showing and giving a reminder to the Kuffar Quraysh. Remember what happened to all these nations. Surah Yunus was ended with the saying of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What's the end? اتبع ما يوحى إليك. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminded at the end of the surah, because he can do in the surah, اتبع, O Muhammad, follow what was revealed upon you. اتبع ما يوحى إليك, and then واصبر, have sabr. Because he knew, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows the situation of Muhammad, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminded him, اتبع ما يوحى. You're going to have a difficulty. When you have the difficulty, it doesn't mean that you're going to stop. And the reality, the situation is either Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is going to give up, or he's going to listen to their conditions. And never Rasulullah sallallahu stopped, and Rasulullah did not even listen to their conditions. And because of that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he reminded him with this saying, اتبع ما يوحى إليك واصبر حتى يحكم الله وهو خير الحاكمين. Until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes a rule, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the best ruler. And then we went into Surah Hud, and there Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned many stories of the nations before Islam, before Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and how Allah destroyed them. And again, it's a reminder to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He reminded him in just what Imam read, and the way how he looked at it, the story how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroyed the people of Nuh at the flood, when he destroyed his own son, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminded, because Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sad at that time. He lost his main supporter, Abu Talib. He lost him because he died. He's not a supporter anymore, and he died in kufr. We Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, we believe that Abu Talib, he died as a kafir. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminded Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam how Nuh was very eager that his son to be a believer, but he died as disbeliever. You, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you have the same situation. You are not the first one, and you are the Anbiya before you, they face the same thing. This is Nuh. He wanted his son to be a believer, but he died as disbeliever. And we just continue, وَمَا عَلَى الرَّسُولِ إِلَّا الْبَلَاغِ. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ended the surah, and we have the Surah Yusuf, which inshallah will be talked about it. And Sheikh Ahmad, inshallah, maybe tomorrow, bi-idhnillah ta'ala.